In this episode, we're going to be talking about the actual literal formation of the planet that you live on. So from a chronological perspective, relative to the rest of the series, we're kind of taking a very big jump backwards. This is before continents, this is before mountains, this is before rivers, this is before anything that has kind of occurred in the previous episodes. This is how the Earth itself formed.
Alright, let me just preface this by saying that this is the best understanding that we have based on the science available, dotted and punctuated by the occasional inference. This is the most accurate interpretation that I can possibly convey as to how the planet you're standing on actually formed. And you are currently essentially standing on the aftermath of multiple stellar explosions, which sounds like something that a bloke wearing a tinfoil hat might shout at pigeons. However, it is probably true. And the iron in your chest, the calcium in your bones, the silicon in rocks, and the gold in jewellery, none of it existed when the universe actually began. And the early universe was actually quite boring. It's just things like hydrogen, helium, tiny traces of lithium. And for the most part, that's kind of just it, really. There's not really any planets or continents. There's certainly no volcanoes or oceans. They come much later. So in a lot of ways, there's not really any geology yet because we just don't have the base ingredients for it. So the ingredients aren't there, so stars essentially had to manufacture them. So the stars are surprisingly productive right up until the point that they explode, of course. So deep inside stars, lighter elements fuse together. Fusion. Hydrogen becomes helium. Helium becomes heavier elements. And the larger the star, the further that process can continue. Even if you only have a rudimentary understanding of the periodic table, you've all heard of things like carbon and oxygen and silicon and iron. These are the building blocks of future planets, and they have a profoundly bigger impact on your daily life than things on the periodic table like seaborgium and rutherfordium, for example. So these are the building blocks of future planets, future mountains, future life. Then, of course, eventually gravity starts to play a role in this. That star collapses, and sometimes it actually explodes, and sometimes this is quite violent. And that explosion essentially scatters those elements across space. So every atom, heavier than iron at least, requires even more extreme conditions. And this is things like neutron star collisions, supernovae, and this is catastrophic beyond human comprehension or imagination. However, without them, Earth doesn't really get a chance to start. There's no firing pistol on this. So eventually one peculiar region of space becomes crowded with this sort of recycled material, gas and dust and fragments of dead stars. And gravity starts causing problems, as gravity, of course, usually does. So a giant molecular cloud begins collapsing inward. So in the case of the genesis of our planet in particular, material accelerated, the cloud started spinning, faster, and then faster, and then faster, and as it shrank, it flattened into more or less a disk. So at the centre, temperatures became ridiculous, pressure also becomes ridiculous, and eventually the sun ignited, not exploded, ignited. So, and that is an important distinction that I want you to bear with. So the solar system now had a star, right? Our own star, but it didn't yet have any planets. So at the moment, it's just an enormous rotating disk of debris orbiting around a very, very young sun. So this is the part of the episode where our planet starts to really coalesce. So dust grains begin to collide, and these tiny fragments will stick together, and then pebble-sized objects begin to form. They're very, very small at this point, and then they become bigger. So then they become boulder-sized objects, and then mountain-sized objects, and then objects that are literally miles across. Not because anyone's carefully assembling them, but because they keep smashing into each other again and again and again. And the early solar system looked less like a well-organized machine and more like a scrapyard being hit by artillery. So this indefatigably growing thing is essentially going to become the planet that you live on, so bear with this. So at this stage, it's barely really resembling a planet at all. The surface was largely molten, impacts occurred more or less constantly, and temperatures were very, very, very extreme. There were no continents at this point. There's certainly no oceans. They come much later. So there's no atmosphere, at least not one worth mentioning, and nothing remotely kind of inviting. If modern Earth feels stable, young Earth definitely doesn't by comparison. Then something quite cataclysmic happened. Now, a protoplanet that we think was roughly the size of Mars And scientists call this protoplanet Thea. A little fun fact for you, before my daughter was born 10 years ago, before I actually knew this story, I was actually thinking of calling my daughter Thea until I realised that I would essentially be naming my daughter after a very destructive protoplanet. So now she's called Ophelia instead. So this collision that followed remains one of the most absurd events in planetary history. The impact released energy equivalent to billions of nuclear weapons, so entire regions just became vaporized. Rock was blasted into orbit as a result of this, and parts of both worlds were effectively shredded. And from that orbiting debris, we get the moon. Probably. We're not 100% sure on this, but probably. Please understand that when it comes to concepts and subjects like this, these are things that occurred billions of years before we were even here, so a lot of this is just where the evidence points strongly in a particular direction, and it points in that one, so sometimes reality genuinely has no interest in being sensible. So the collision left Earth partially molten once again, and in fact for a period there may have been global magma oceans. Actual oceans of magma made of molten rock. I want you to picture that for a minute. Now, this sounds significantly less relaxing than modern oceans, of course, but over time gravity began sorting these materials out. The dense stuff began to sink. Planetary differentiation, which is one of these horrific words that's really difficult to pronounce. It's like how some people can't say millennium, for example. Try slipping differentiation into a coherent sentence, but it's essentially a fancy way of saying gravity organized everything into layers. Core, mantle, crust, to be reductive. So the same structure that more or less still exists today, and that structure is a little bit more nuanced than that, but we're going to go with just core, mantle, crust. Now, the core didn't simply just sit there, it remained hot, in fact extremely hot, and crucially it remained mobile, which is very, very important. So what do I mean by this? Let's lend context to this mobility. So liquid iron continued circulating very, very, very far beneath the surface, and it's that movement which generated our magnetic field. And I've done an entire episode on the magnetic field, so if you want to watch an entire episode on the magnetic field, by all means skip back and go and watch that episode, but it's an important part of the Earth's formation, so here it is. So it's essentially an invisible shield extending very, very, very far into space, and without it, the solar wind would interact with our atmosphere very differently. So Mars provides a very useful warning. Mars once had rivers and lakes and perhaps even oceans, we think, but today it's largely cold and dry, and different worlds, different histories, different outcomes. So meanwhile, Earth continued cooling down, and at least by geological standards, it's still very hot, but it's cooling down. So volcanoes begin erupting, in fact erupting constantly, and they were pumping out gases, in fact huge quantities of them. So water vapor, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, sulfur compounds. The atmosphere is now developing, and then temperatures dropped enough for water vapor to condense. Rain began falling and keeps falling, and in fact some people think this happened for thousands if not millions of years. And of course, as a very fortunate byproduct of this very extended period of rain, we get things like oceans. And of course, oceans are very, very important if you want to live or swim. So eventually enough water accumulated to form these oceans, and now Earth possessed something incredibly important, which is kind of long-term liquid water. So the bombardment hadn't completely finished yet. Remember the bombardment from earlier? Still happening. So for hundreds of millions of years, asteroids and comets continued striking this very young planet of ours. Some of these impacts brought things like water, some brought organic molecules, some just brought chaos. So the exact balance remains somewhat debated. In fact, all of this does, but this in particular. But what matters is that the Earth wasn't being built by a single process. It was multiple systems that were operating simultaneously. Impacts, volcanism, chemistry, gravity, atmospheric evolution, all happening in tandem or together or at different stages. And somewhere in this meandering medley of madness comes life. It appeared, and we don't know precisely how or when, and anyone claiming otherwise is frankly overselling the evidence. But scientists do have several theories about this, or at least hypotheses about this. So things like hydrothermal vents, shallow tidal environments, chemical self-organization. There are multiple different candidates for this, but the jury is very much out on this as well, which is perhaps one of the reasons the origin of life remains one of the pursuit's greatest mysteries. And what I think interests me in particular the most about the formation of this planet is not just the fact that it happened. I mean, that's cool. But what's more interesting, perhaps, in my opinion, is the fact that it worked, because there were loads of opportunities for this to go very, very, very wrong. The planet could have just remained completely barren, like something out of Mad Max without the cars, or the atmosphere could have just been stripped away, or the oceans might not have formed, or the moon might never have existed. Life might never have appeared. So you and me and David Beckham and the Spice Girls, and the jury is still out as to whether or not they were a good thing. Yet here we are.
All of the videos from this series are going to be collectively thrown into a playlist, and this playlist is going to be developed over a period of months and years. And the reason why we're doing this is so that you can pick the point at which you start to feel fuzzy within this subject, and then go at your own pace from the point where you start to feel stuck. And if you support what we're doing here at Salt Shack, which is essentially trying to make an overtly complicated subject just that little bit more comprehensible, consider supporting us by following, subscribing, liking the video that you just watched, commenting underneath, or if you want a more comprehensive understanding of the subject, consider buying our book, The Salt Shack Mineral Manual. Thank you.